Earlier in the week, on 26 November, the Greek Prime Minister Kyriakos Mitsotakis, during an interview with the BBC, said that the Parthenon sculpture should be returned to Greece, and having half the collection in London and the other half in Athens is like cutting the Mona Lisa in half. His comments set off a diplomatic row with the UK. British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak cancelled a scheduled meeting with Mitsotakis. Mitsotakis rejected an alternative meeting with the Deputy Prime Minister Oliver Dowden that was offered after Sunak's cancellation. The Parthenon sculptures are a collection of different types of marble architectural decoration from the Temple of Athena, the Parthenon, held by the British Museum in London. The sculptures, also known as the Elgin marbles after Thomas Bruce, the 7th Earl of Elgin and the 11th Earl of Kincardine, who transported the sculptures from Greece to the United Kingdom in 1803. It has been part of the collection of the British Museum since 1816. This is not a question of returning artifacts whose ownership we question. We feel that these sculptures belong to Greece and that they were essentially stolen. But this is not, in my mind, an ownership question. This is a reunification argument, Mitsotakis said to the BBC. Where can you best appreciate what is essentially one monument? It's as if I told you that you would cut the Mona Lisa in half and you would have half of it at the Louvre and half of it at the British Museum. Do you think your viewers would appreciate the beauty of the painting? Mitsotakis added during his interview. ThePrint explains the sculptures at the center of the diplomatic row, how they ended up in London, and the current status of negotiations over its return to Athens. The Parthenon sculptures consist of 16 metopes, which are sculpted relief panels, 17 pedimental figures, sculptures from the triangular space that forms the gable of a low-pitched roof, and 247 feet of the original frieze commemorating the birthday of goddess Athena. Lord Elgin, the then British ambassador to the Ottoman Empire, which at the time was the governing authority of Athens, had received a firman or a permit by the Ottoman Sultan Selim III to remove about half the sculptures from the ruins of the Parthenon. However, the legality of the permit is questionable. British historian William St. Clair, in a 1967 study titled Lord Elgin and the Marbles, concluded that there was no permission given for the removal and export of the frieze and sculptures from the Parthenon. A report in the National Geographic magazine notes. The specific passage of the controversial permit that is often cited as legal proof for the export of the sculpture reads, "When they wish to take away some pieces of stone with old inscriptions and figures, no opposition be made." Experts explain to ThePrint that the permit probably allowed for the removal of loose rubble in the Parthenon and nothing more. The British Museum, however, on its website, states that the removal of sculptures was thoroughly investigated by the British Parliamentary Select Committee in 1816, and the process was considered to be entirely legal. The sculptures eventually reached London after a perilous journey that involved a shipwreck and Lord Elgin being imprisoned in France near the Spanish border for 3 years. Lord Elgin paid roughly £74,000, or about $1 million in today's terms, from his own pocket for the retrieval and export of the marbles from Greece to the UK. In 1808, while going through an expensive divorce settlement, Elgin put pressure on the British government to purchase the sculptures, the National Geographic magazine reports. The negotiations unleashed a frenzy in the British public, with those believing that it should be bought with public money, to those like the poet Byron, who was against the removal of the sculptures from Greece in the first place. The Parliament created a commission in 1816 to value the collection and finally agreed to offer Elgin £35,000, or roughly $500,000 in today's terms, for the whole collection. The Parliament voted on the proposal and approved the sale by a close margin, 82 to 80. In 1832, however, the Kingdom of Greece secured its full independence from the Ottoman Empire, and since then, successive governments have petitioned for the return of the Parthenon sculptures. The British Museum has so far refused all requests for its return, the National Geographic reports. The British Museum website states that a formal request for the return of the Parthenon sculptures was first made in 1983. There have been various meetings and discussions since then. Media coverage has referred to the Greek government requests to borrow the sculptures, but a loan request has never been received, the British Museum website states. Any permanent return or restoration of ownership to Greece is currently prohibited by the British Museum Act 1963. Sections 4 and 5 of the Act allows for the museum to lend its collection or dispose under specific conditions. The object is a duplicate of another object. The object was not made earlier than 1850 and substantially consists of a copy, and if the object is considered to be unfit to be retained by the museum. There exists a precedent for museums even within the United Kingdom, however, to return objects with questionable pasts. In 2022, the Glasgow Museums agreed to return 7 artifacts to India, including 6 items from the 14th century and 11th century, which were stolen during the 19th century, according to various media reports. The Glasgow Museums has a history of repatriating stolen artifacts to their source nations, starting from at least 1998. It agreed to return 19 bronzes stolen from the sacked city of Benin in Nigeria in 1897, previously to its return of its Indian artifacts. Similarly, hundreds of objects stolen during the Dutch colonization of Indonesia and Sri Lanka was announced to be returned to their source nations earlier in July 2023. The objects were returned by the Museum Volkenkunde, located in the city of Leiden in the Netherlands. This is Keshav Padmanabhan from ThePrint. Please subscribe to ThePrint for the latest news and analysis.